Okay, how would you make bigger enemies?
To be offended or frightened of everything.
So you've become like the sort of Tony Scarface of podcasting.
The Gerald Ford aircraft carrier.
We're live? Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the morning show. We started our conversation over here while Poseidon figured out his stuff over there. Technical things, always challenging for Poseidon. Good morning. Thank you for tuning in. Head on over to patreon.com/Pantelis. You're going to get all the exclusive content over there, the entire back catalog of a bunch of podcasts that are produced out of this channel. Of course, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this YouTube channel. Poseidon, like always, behind the console, fucking shit up. And we have Ted Bird, the legendary Ted Bird, also co-host of Standing By, the Terry and Ted podcast. We got a special show today.
I can fuck things up too, by the way.
Fuck shit up, flip tables upside down.
Just give me a minute. Give me a minute. I'll fuck things up. We do have a special show today. I've invited a friend of mine, Jeff Kovac, who's his main claim to fame was that he hosted the Soulange Irish Society St. Patrick's Day Parade Grand Marshal roast in 2016 when I was the Grand Marshal. That's what really put him on the map.
Big time. I'm still fending off the paparazzi.
No doubt. No doubt. But the reason I asked Jeff to come in today on a far more serious note is that Jeff is a Montrealer. He is Jewish. He has lived in Israel and he served in the Israeli Defense Forces. So I thought there's a guy who can bring us an informed perspective from somebody who knows the lay of the land. Mm-hmm. And obviously, Jeff brings a perspective. He brings a Jewish perspective. He brings an Israeli perspective. But we've also, I've pointed this out on social media, we're opening up the live chat and we are welcoming respectful dialogue. Mm-hmm. Anybody who wants to chime in on the live chat, anyone has any questions, any comments, we welcome that.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, welcome to the morning show.
Evcharisto, thank you.
There you have
Thanks
it.
so much.
Before we get started, and obviously I think unless you've been living under a rock or unless you haven't touched your phone at all to go through social media, you've probably been made aware of things that have been unfolding in the Middle East over the weekend and still up until today. Just for everyone watching, we're not going to pretend to know everything. We're not experts. We're not here to even to think of any solutions. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to have this discussion because of the images that came out of that day on Saturday, which I think are going to go down in history, which they already have gone down in history. Just horrible stuff happening. To think that a human being is capable of doing such harm, and sorry, I'm making noise. And to terrorize unarmed civilians, children, women, is just I still think of last Saturday, and I'm still very much troubled by what we saw, and I'm assuming, Jeff, that you're probably in the same boat there. So, just a blanket statement. We're not here to offer any solutions or act like we're experts in any way, shape, or form. We want to have a conversation about the things that we witnessed, what's happening on the ground, and like Ted said, thankfully we have someone that has the experience, that has lived there, that has served in Israel. But also not only specifically about what's been happening in Israel, but what's been happening all over the world, especially also in Montreal, following these events, which is also equally troubling to me as well. Yeah. So we're going to get started with that. I think first we can maybe start by setting the context for people who may not have been made aware. Ted, do you want to take the lead on that?
Well, I mean, we're talking about what happened on Saturday, which was Hamas terrorists breaking through the border and with Israel and going into Israel and massacring hundreds of women and children, followed by Israeli retaliation, which is ongoing, which is, to my understanding, targeted bombing of Gaza, which has inevitable civilian casualties as well. And, from what I'm able to gather, just from what I watch on the news, it's a situation that's escalating, and there doesn't appear to be, any immediate resolution in sight. And so, who knows where it's going to go from here and how quickly it's going to get to wherever it's going to go. I'd also like to set the table and get some context by getting Jeff to explain how and when you ended up in Israel and during what time period you served with the IDF and what was going on at that time.
Thanks, Ted. I was fortunate. When I was there, it wasn't an overly difficult time. I born and raised here in Montreal, met a girl in Israel, my first year of university while I was there. The whole summer love story, came back to finish my degree. And then when I moved to Israel, when you're under the age of 35 and you are now a citizen of Israel, you are basically putting yourself into conscription. So I did basic training, and then I served in the Golani unit, which is in the northern part of Israel, which borders Lebanon. And there were a couple of times where I was on the border of Gaza. I met tons and tons. I should actually premise that the vast majority of Palestinians, and when I say vast majority, I'm not saying 55%. I would estimate that we're talking 90% of Palestinians have a very deep-rooted admiration and love for Israel. So what a lot of people watch on the news and read in the newspapers, and that fascinating kind of news story that everyone is projected to, is not really the truth. The vast majority of Palestinians are very loving. They're law-abiding people. They're lovely. They would invite you into their house and offer you coffee and tea and sit down to have couscous with them. It's the 10%, which is actually also a CIA and RCMP estimate, that is the indoctrinated population of the Muslim community. And even though it's 90-10, if you think about it, if there are approximately 1.6 billion Muslim people living on the planet, that accrues for 160 million people who have become radicalized and fanatics. And that's a large number. That's literally half of the United States' population. So when I say 90% of Palestinians, there are approximately, I think the last number was 2.5 million Palestinians. Okay, so 90% of them are very lovely people. I worked alongside of them. I played soccer with them. There are dozens of Israeli companies that border Gaza that actually employ hundreds of Palestinians every day. They apply for their work permits. They are vetted, just like any foreigner would be vetted. And they get their work permits, and they cross the border every day, and they work for companies like SodaStream, for example, or Naot Sandals, or the pharmaceutical companies. They come in, they make their living, they go back, and they want the same things that you and I want. You know, they want to send their kids to a good school. They want to have a place to send their kids to soccer practice. They want to watch reruns of Beverly Hills 90210 on cable TV. You know, they just want the same thing that I think everyone in the free world wants, is the choice to how they live their lives. But like I said, it's the 10% of the indoctrinated who are making 99% of the noise.
Yeah. Why don't we hear the 90%?
They're scared. They're scared. And when TV cameras and reporters are there to interview them, they know that they're being watched. And I can understand, because the repercussions of them voicing their true opinion is not something that you'd want to go ahead and put yourself into.
Well, based on what we saw this weekend, it's, I can understand them being
But
scared.
I strongly suggest that if people really want to know the truth, okay, coming from a Jew, obviously people are going to see that there's a bias. And to be honest with you, yeah, I'm Jewish, and I'm a full supporter of my heritage and my people and my country. But I also have a deep love and empathy for my Palestinian cousins, because a lot of people don't realize that Arabs and Jews we're technically and scientifically DNA rooted. We're cousins. Yeah. We're cousins. So there's no issue of Jews versus Muslims. There's no issue of Israelis versus Palestinians. This is a rooted cause in an indoctrinated form of Islam against infidels. And the Jews happen to be the infidels in the Middle East. But I mean, this did not start with Israel. I mean, Christians have been persecuted in the Middle East for thousands of years. And there aren't any Jews left, hardly in Morocco. And there are hardly any Jews left in Egypt. And I don't think there are any Jews left in Syria. They've all been expelled because of the radicalization of some Islamic clerics. But I mean, I think the world, and I'm optimistic, I think the world is changing. Saudi Arabia is now a friend of Israel. And there's actually a synagogue in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's plenty of flights from Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv that fly every day to Saudi Arabia.
How did that normalization come about?
People may not want to like this, but Donald Trump had a huge part of it. They may not want to like, I'm not a big fan of his persona, his character.
Listen,
but
I'm on board with you. He's a blowhard and a narcissist, but he got some things done.
Yeah. And you know what? Someone wise told me something very recently. They said, why do you care about someone's personality? You should care about the merits of his job. If he's doing a good job, you're not going to sit down and have dinner with him every night. He's not going to be a friend of yours. So who cares what his kind of personality he has? And yeah, he's a narcissist. He's a megalomaniac. And I certainly wouldn't want to introduce him to a sister of mine for dating. But he did what he said he was going to do.
So he brokered a normalization between...
well, there's very few people that know this, but it's the Abraham Accords.
Correct.
They were signed by Donald Trump. Saudi Arabia hasn't yet signed the accord, but basically that treaty, that deal was brokered, including Israel and many other countries in Middle East, to engage in different trade agreements, and there's talks of pipelines crossing through the Middle East as well. So it's this huge negotiation with a bunch of countries, and it's been proven over history, when you get enemies to collaborate on an economic front or to trade, and that's exactly how the European Union started. The European Union was the coal and steel community, the European coal and steel community. That's how it started between France and Germany, and that's how they got the original five. Because specifically they were afraid of another Second World War starting in that region. And because they kind of merged their business and their trade together, nothing ever since the Second World War has occurred. So something similar was designed in the Middle East. And again, we're not experts, but from the analysis that I've been reading and from the different commentary, Saudi Arabia was about to sign the Abraham Accords, and there's a lot of speculation to the effect that this whole thing has been plotted, particularly by Iran, to bring together the Arab people.
This whole thing being what happened
exactly
this weekend,
Yeah.
to send a message to the Saudis. that they're not happy. Of course, this is just one side of the analysis, but that's just like a big parenthesis about the deal that Donald Trump brokered, which not many people talk about, which is a huge success, especially in that region. And again, nobody here in particular is a big fan of Donald Trump. We can all have our opinions on him.
I am.
But that agreement definitely deserves its merit. But I want to go back, Jeff, to what you were saying about going to Israel and how was that experience actually living there and contributing to that society, right? Just by serving in the military and that whole experience.
Eye-opening. I'll tell you openly and honestly that when I was a kid growing up here as a Jewish kid going to Jewish day school, I didn't grow up in an overly religious house. But yeah, my parents celebrated the Sabbath Friday nights, not for religious purposes. I think it was more for tradition to have the family together. But I was never taught that Arabs are bad. I was never taught in school it's a Jewish world versus a non-Jewish world. I was never taught that the Arabs are trying to kill us. I was taught history. And the things that I read in the newspapers and the news reports that I watched on TV, I remember as a kid, it didn't indoctrinate me to the point where I was hating people. But yeah, I was skeptical of when I would first go to Israel when I was 14 years old. I was a little bit taken aback because the Arabs are not what I expected them to be. The Bedouins of Israel are some of the most lovely people I've ever met. You walk into their tent and there's a beautiful tradition that the Bedouins have. And they offer you a glass of tea. And if they fill the tea up 3/4 of the way, it for them means that there's always more for you to have after,
right.
And that they're here to offer more. If they fill it up all the way, it means that you're really persona non grata, okay? Which only happens if you're incredibly rude or they don't want to have you.
How did you figure that out?
They told me.
Okay, so you got 3/4?
I got 3/4. Yeah,
Nice.
But I was exposed to a lot of truths that I had never been exposed to before, and that's why I tell a lot of my friends and even Arabic clients of mine and people that I've met who are a little bit on the negative Israel front. I said, guys, go there, take a vacation. See what the country is all about. A lot of people don't realize that how many Supreme Court judges there are in Israel. There are either 9 or 7, I don't remember. But Khalel Kaboub is a very well-respected and recognized Supreme Court judge on Israel's Supreme Court.
And he's an Arab, I assume, from the name.
He's a Muslim Arab.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyone who uses the word apartheid, before you go ahead and start using words like this, I implore you, find out how many Arabs are on the Israeli soccer team. How many Arabs led the under 20-year-old Israeli soccer team just a few months ago in the under 20 FIFA World Cup? Who led the team in goals? Arab Israelis, Muslims.
Yeah.
And they're all putting their arms around each other and celebrating together. There are, I think, 8.5 million Israelis, of which 2 million of them are Arabs. They're Arab Israelis.
Yeah.
It's not, yes, it's considered the Jewish state, but we celebrate Christmases there and they celebrate Ramadan, and it's a diverse culture of people who there is coexistence in Israel. The problem, like I said, is in the territories which are governed by extremists from Qatar and Iran. It's not even about land. It's about money.
Yeah.
It's about money. These people have become insanely wealthy.
You made an interesting Facebook post yesterday along those lines. Can you summarize that off the top of your head?
Well, just for example, okay, Israel over 75 years. I don't know if you've ever been. I'm not sure if Ted has been. It's a lot of people don't realize that Israel is not this third world country.
No.
It's a mecca of high tech, of skyscrapers, beautiful resorts. They've got the headquarters of Microsoft and Intel and all sorts of fascinating international companies based in Israel. But it's been done because the aid that Israel has received internationally over the last 75 years, we've used it I say we as Israel, to build a country, to build a society, to build something that
For the collective good.
for the collective
Yeah.
good of humanity. I mean, for example, the Weizmann Institute, which is considered like the MIT of the Middle East, they have people from all over the world coming to do their research as PhDs at the Weizmann Institute, which is about 20 minutes south of Tel Aviv. And people are fascinated thinking, oh, Weizmann Institute, it's all Jewish. No. There's plenty of Swedes and Finnish people and Germans and French and Muslims, Christians, all coming together to do research. My point is that if people saw it for their own eyes, instead of hearing what they're hearing through whatever newscast they're hearing, I'm sure they would come back to Canada or to the United States or to wherever. And I'm hoping that they would reveal the truth.
It's interesting what you're saying, because I had the enormous privilege of having been invited to Israel and having participated to this young political leaders mission. And it's something that the Jewish community over here was organizing. It was now they're called CIJA. Back then, I can't remember what it was. And specifically, it's designed for that. It's to take people, and of course, because the Jewish lobby is pretty important, pretty strong, not only in Quebec but across the world. And there is this constant effort of building bridges and creating community, and of course part of that has to do with the political class as well. And I was privileged to be part of this mission to Israel. I think it was back in 2008, and it's incredible what you're saying, that you need to be on the ground to witness this. And obviously, maybe the last thing on someone's mind is to travel to Israel when you can be traveling to any other reputed vacation spot. But it's a fantastic country. It's a beautiful country.
Well, I've heard that physically it's beautiful.
It's remarkable.
Yeah.
It's an incredible, and it's an incredible country, and the people and everything about it is beautiful. And we went around, and it wasn't so much a trip to just go and have fun kind of thing. We went and we visited the political institutions and the court, and we went obviously to the Holocaust Museum. And we met also with Palestinian journalists, so that they made sure that we got both sides of the coin explained to us. And we went to see they were building the wall. We went to Jerusalem, and that's where you see exactly what Jeff described as this completely diverse country. Jerusalem is just something incredible.
It's incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's where you see this peaceful coexistence of people that come from diverse backgrounds that have different belief systems, because it's not only Christians.
Sure.
Jerusalem, right? I mean, every religion has a seat on the table over there. And it was fascinating. And it's exactly what you said. You come back and you are a completely changed person. Your understanding of the reality and the outlook you have towards not only the cause, but in general what's going on in that region is something that will remain at least in me forever. And every time there's something that happens in that region, obviously we can't come out and just start explaining things because we don't know. I mean, that's not the point. The point is that there is so much disinformation, like you said, and there's such a lack of education to the point where you have literal terrorists that went in, killed, I think
1,200 people today.
It's over 1,000 people
who were killed in the terrorist attacks.
Correct.
Exactly.
Most of them civilians.
They're still finding bodies.
They're still finding bodies, and yesterday was the most tragic. They went into one of the kibbutz where they went and murdered just families, and they killed little kids, like 1-2-year-old kids.
Infants.
They beheaded them. So they found infants that were beheaded. It's just barbaric to see the images and all the stories that are coming out on a daily basis. And it's undeniable that Hamas is a terrorist organization. I think it's been recognized as such almost everywhere all over the world. And to have demonstrators, rallying in all cities across the world, and even here in Canada.
Our own included. I think one of the first big demonstrations was in Montreal.
It was in Toronto, and I think the day after it was in Montreal. And And here's the thing that I've always distinguished, and you were very right to mention it as well, Jeff. You can support the Palestinian cause and certain legitimate request for self-determination, and that's one thing. We've lived it here in Quebec, and that's one thing. But to associate that in support of Hamas, for me, is unjustifiable. And I don't understand how now they're just starting now, the politicians, to come out and denounce the demonstrations happening, because they're not just demonstrations rallying support for the Palestinian cause. These are rallies celebrating the horror that we saw.
Did you see the one outside the Sydney Opera House in Australia?
Yeah.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate, there are so many different premises and philosophies that are taught in Judaism. And I'm not an overly religious Jew. I'm a proud Jew. All four of my grandparents were Holocaust survivors. There's the premise of tzedakah, which means charity. And then there's the premise of tikkun olam in Hebrew, and means to repair the world, which basically is everyone's responsibility to leave the world in a better place than how you found it. But there's one main premise of Judaism that I was taught as a kid, and it's to ask lama, which in Hebrew means why. Always ask why. Why is the sky blue? Why does chemotherapy work this way? So that's how you progress and you learn, by asking why. So if you're asking why did this happen, my own personal point of view is because Iran is a totalitarian state that is governed by Ali Khomeini, who is a radical cleric. And there is big money behind this, and I will prove it to you. Yasser Arafat died in, I believe it was 2004. When he died, Yasser Arafat, everyone knows who was the leader of the PLO, former head of the PLO. When he died in France, his bank accounts in Switzerland were recovered with $1.4 billion of gold bullion and banknotes. He then, and his not him, but his wife and his daughter also inherited stock options in a Pepsi company in Ramallah. It was a bottling company. Today, his wife and his daughter are worth $6 billion US. Embezzled money from all of the world organizations that were helping the Palestinian cause. Musa Mohammed Abu Marzouk. He is the deputy chairman of Hamas and the political bureau. He actually does not even reside in Gaza. None of these men who I'll mention reside in Gaza. They all reside in Qatar. He's worth $3 billion US. Abdel Aziz Al-Rantisi. He died in 2004. He was the, I think he was, he was assassinated in 2004. He was a political leader of Hamas. He left $5 million US behind.
Who took him out? Do you know?
I have a feeling that it was someone who knows how to say toda rabba and shalom.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I figured. Yeah. That would have been my guess, too.
Right now, the current leader of Hamas, who actually also lives in Qatar, his name is Ismail Haniyeh, chairman of the Hamas Political Bureau. You want to guess his net worth, Ted?
I won't guess, but I'll bet that it would do a nice job of upgrading the infrastructure in Gaza.
Yeah, $4 billion
go.
US.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just an estimate.
Yeah.
$4 billion. All of this money has been embezzled and stifled from the Palestinian people. So when I was mentioning how Israel has built a country over 75 years, we didn't build it by ourselves. You know, I'll be the first one to admit, Germany was there in reparations, the United States, France, Italy, a huge contributor to how Israel became who they are by offering their Fiat production, small cars, to Israel at very low prices to help move the economy.
Yeah.
But Israel took advantage, not advantage, but great.
They
was
put it to good
grateful,
cause.
Put it to good cause. And today they have a thriving economy and a thriving population. And we treat the Palestinians the same way we treat our own people. It's just that, unfortunately, they are under the rule of tyrants. Tyrants. So when people wave the flag of Palestine and say free Palestine, I agree with them. Free Palestine from Hamas.
Yeah. Yeah. Hamas is the elected leadership, though, in Gaza, are they not?
And they haven't had an election since they were first elected. And I can
Okay.
tell you this also, not from my own personal knowledge, but from what I've heard, is that that was not the most democratic election.
Yeah.
You know, like people ask, why are they going ahead and showing this or showing that in Gaza? Because they're scared. They're scared to admit the truth.
You know what's surreal when you think of it, and this is how I've been thinking about, the Middle East for years now, which is why I'm a huge supporter of the state of Israel, and that's no secret. Imagine hypothetically you wake up tomorrow and there is no Israel. It's not there. It's not on the map. It doesn't exist. Okay. Can you imagine the chaos in that particular region of the world? It is the only stable stable, maybe not now. I mean, it has its own interior political issues, just like any country.
Sure.
But it is a sound governing democracy, Israel, compared to any other country around it that isn't. And that, to me, is just a stark reminder of who you need to trust and who you don't. Because when you're dealing with a country and its government, and you know that it has been duly elected by its people in free elections, there's something to say about that. Whereas you can't say that about Iran, obviously. Can't say that about Syria, Gaza. You can't say that about Gaza. Every country bordering Israel is a sketchy government. So for me, that's the main issue that I always keep telling myself. Is like, how can countries not trust Israel, and how can they side with another country? And we're seeing that in this conflict, geopolitically and geostrategically right now, things are going to move. And we're seeing Turkey now taking a side, which obviously comes as no surprise. But let's not forget, Turkey is a NATO ally.
Yeah.
And they were out the other day threatening the U.S. not to bring its warships so that they can avoid anyone else from coming in from the coast, whether it's Turkey or any other country. And this is a NATO ally. And then you wonder, what the fuck is going on in this world, right?
During the massive Turkish earthquake was just a couple of years ago.
A couple
the
months
first
ago.
100 people on the ground arrived in Turkey from Israel.
Yeah.
Aid workers and construction workers and engineers. All right, so there are a lot of factors as to why these countries are hating Israel. There's still anti-Semitism and Jew hatred stemming from thousands of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
People feel that the Jews stole land or colonialists of Israel. Not true. Not true. As a matter of fact, Israel accepted or offered 5 times to the Palestinian Authority, including Yasser Arafat, who refused offers from the Israeli Prime Minister. This is dating back more than 20 years ago. Land for peace. It's two-state solution. It has been rejected every time. They're not interested in coexistence.
Yeah. Tell me something, Jeff. Do you have obviously friends and family over there?
Yeah, I have 2 brother-in-laws who are there right now, and a cousin also who I don't know where he is.
Are you okay? That was my next question.
Yeah.
If you're in communication with them at all, and if you're getting any feedback from the ground, from what's been happening.
The only thing that I've been told from family in Israel right now is that everyone is very anxious to know when their loved ones are coming back from the army. There have been, I think, 300,000 reservists who have been brought up, which I think is the largest amount of reservists in the history of the country. But yeah, to use a Yiddish term, they're on shpilkas, which means they're anxious. There's high level of stress.
Do you not have a military age or close to military age son? Or am I wrong?
My
there?
son is 22 years old, but he's born here.
Okay.
Did
he not go though?
No, he wanted to go, and then COVID hit. This is, I think, about 2.5, 3 years ago already. Well, COVID hit in 2021? 2020.
Yeah.
So, my God, yeah, it's over 3 years ago. And Israel closed their borders to everyone. So that was not something that was made available to him. He wanted to go ahead and serve. His mother served also. My grandfather, as a matter of fact, served in the Haganah, which was the founding army of Israel.
So in the 1948 war.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If your son came to you today and said, "Dad, I want to go," What was
Oof,
your reaction
that's
to
a tough one. You know, I've been asked that many times. I couldn't say no.
Has he expressed an opinion to you, or
He's a huge, staunch advocate for Israel. As a matter of fact, last night he put together a beautiful candlelight memorial service that I believe 300 or 400 people attended. He is a very proud Zionist and proud Jewish young man. I know that his aspirations are to one day move to Israel. I know he wants to do a law degree and take his law degree and turn it into something for Israel advocacy. It's easy for the Jewish people to advocate for themselves. What I implore to everyone in the non-Jewish community is to have the truth revealed to them and to please speak up. To speak up. Imagine if this happened, you know, if you're Italian, if Italy was bombarded with a terrorist attack, what would you do? I would be there to support you. Or if this happened to Greece.
Yeah.
You know, this is not about, like I said, it's not Jews versus Muslims. And it's not Israel versus Palestine. This is tyranny versus
civilization versus barbarity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And,
So the world has to come together and denounce barbarism. This is no longer the second century, you know?
Yeah. And look, I mean, there are more often than we'd like to think sporadic acts of terror, you know, bombings and stuff like that. But this was something else. I mean, this was planned. This was perfectly executed. And to some extent, I mean, you know, we're all talking because of, you know, the tragic images that are coming out. But from a political perspective, I mean, even Netanyahu will have to answer to this because
How did he let it happen?
how does this happen? Like, this is the most secure border.
Yeah, apparently
in
it
the
was a
world.
huge intelligence and military failure.
That's the
One
thing,
of the
you know?
best military, one of the best intelligence services in the world.
Yeah.
And to see how these guys just entered, it was as if you're watching it out of a movie.
It's befuddling because they thwart, I would say, in the hundreds of terrorist attacks every year
Right.
because of intelligence and the people on the ground.
Yeah.
How this happened, I wish I had the answer. I have no idea.
Have there been conspiracy theories born of that?
Oh, I don't want to listen to
There's
them.
probably going to be, and I've heard a few, but see the thing, the sad thing in this, and you know, Jeff made a point about it, that it's unfortunate also for the Palestinians who have been suffering just because of the actions of a small percentage of indoctrinated Islamists. And you're seeing images right now, and you know the frustration has gotten so high, at least from my perspective or the way I see things, where I'm not so sure the Israeli side is going to want to even sit and negotiate or even want to hear anything about it. They're leveling everything.
Well, you can't. You
in
clearly you
Palestine.
can't negotiate with Hamas at this point, can you?
You
if
know,
you're
I
Israel?
listened to a Benjamin Netanyahu speech here in Montreal a number of years ago, and someone asked that exact question, Ted. Okay, why don't you sit down and negotiate? And his answer was very, very smart, but very short and concise. He said, "You can't negotiate with people who want to kill you."
Yeah. Well, it's in their charter
Yeah.
or whatever it's called.
It's in their
right?
political charter.
Yeah.
To wipe out the infidels and to kill every Jew.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you going to
You
negotiate with
can't.
that?
How do you negotiate with people who are so indoctrinated? They're so brainwashed. They're so full of hatred. I mean, for me, I look back at history to find solutions to what's going on right now. Okay? And it's a horrible, horrible travesty of what happened in Japan. Okay? When Harry Truman literally dropped 2 bombs on Japan and wiped out almost the entire country. And then he went in and rebuilt. I'm not advocating for that because I know that the vast majority of Palestinians are peaceful people. They're good people. It's how do you get rid of a portion of the cancer? Okay, I look at it as cancer. You can't destroy the whole body. You have to go after the cancerous elements. Otherwise, you're destroying your entire body. How do you do it? And they've been trying to figure this out for years. I personally think it starts with education. You need to re-educate the entire Middle East. And it is happening. It's happening slowly. And I believe that social media will play a big role in it, because if you look at the Arab uprising, the spring Arab uprising of just a few years ago in
Tunisia.
Egypt,
In
Tunisia
Egypt, yeah,
and
sorry.
Egypt,
Yeah.
okay? How did that start? It started with a Twitter tweet. It started with someone saying it's time for us to all band together and uprise against our tyrannical government of Egypt.
Well, we're seeing it also lately in Iran as well.
Yeah, it is. And people are now exposed to what the Western world has. Okay, they want freedom. It's the one common denominator that I've seen that every single human being on this planet wants. Other than needing oxygen and water to live, every human being that comes into this world, they don't want to be imprisoned. You want freedom. But you don't know what freedom is unless you're exposed to it. So now that there's social media and the internet is basically making the world a smaller place, I believe that people are going to want what we want, and that's why they're uprising. But we need to help them achieve what they are wanting. We can't just allow them to be prisoners to their tyrants.
Ironically, in the West, we're moving away from freedom
Yeah.
incrementally.
Yeah, that's a
The
whole
law
other
of
subject.
creeping incrementalism. Yeah,
Isn't that an eye-opening thing?
yeah, yeah. Is there anybody or anything anyone want to weigh in on the live chat?
There's Insane Mo. Yeah, people should be together and help the innocents. I mean, it goes back to what we were saying, right? I mean, there has to be a clear distinction made between Palestinians and Hamas. And again, not to be repetitive, but you know, when I woke up on Saturday and I saw these things unfolding, of course I felt sad. I have friends in Israel as well, and I almost immediately thought, what kind of repercussions will this have outside, right? Because, like you said, I mean, we have access to information instantly right now, and there's, you know, Palestinians and Jews all over the world. And there was this sickening feeling that I got to the effect that shit, fuck, all hell's gonna break loose, even here possibly. And it's exactly what happened. I mean, we haven't seen violence, but for me, it's just so frustrating and it's disgusting, you know? And I don't know to what extent, you know, our leaders over here can ban these rallies from happening. But to see that people are supporting terrorists, you know, I immediately thought of September 11. And can you imagine the day after September 11, you would have pro-Al-Qaeda rallies around Montreal?
No, I can't imagine
You can't.
that. No,
You
not
can't
at all.
imagine it.
But it's an interesting point that you raise about banning the rallies, because, you know, then you're censoring, then you're arguably trampling free speech. And I find with these rallies, these people expose themselves.
Correct. You know, I asked myself yesterday when I was here in Montreal at a pro-Israel rally just for a few minutes across the street, the police cordoned them off, but there were a few pro-Palestinian flags waving. And I asked myself, if they are promoting, okay, or advocating for free Palestine, that's their right. That's their given right. And even though I don't believe that it's okay for them to be supporting something, especially after is what just happened. Imagine if they were waving the Hamas flag, the green flag. Now, I know that there's a criminal code in Canada that has to do with terrorism and supporting terrorism.
Yes.
So if Hamas is an internationally recognized terrorist group and someone is going ahead and waving a Hamas flag, isn't that a crime?
Well,
Shouldn't
if they-
that be punishable by an arrest?
Well, it's exactly the same thing like if you're waving a Nazi flag,
Yeah.
right? So to me, it's not so much about freedom of expression. And yes, you know, we've spoken about this when we spoke about the trucker rally and how it was ridiculous for the government to come out against them. I mean, they were just there expressing their
The
opinion.
truckers seem pretty benign at this point.
Yeah,
don't they?
exactly. No, but I mean, just to see the contrast of, you know, where does freedom of expression end?
Where does it cross into
right?
hate?
Exactly.
Where does it cross into
And
hate speech?
for me, I think they've crossed that line. I mean, when you're celebrating the murder of innocent, unarmed civilians,
But I also think that I think they do themselves a disservice, like I said before, because they're exposing themselves.
Correct.
And they're right there for all of us to see.
Yeah.
You know, okay, we know who you are. We know what we're dealing with.
And they're proud of it.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
They're so proud of
Yeah.
it. And I used to be empathetic to these people because they're unbeknownst to them, they don't know the truth. Okay, so they're basically just jumping on the bandwagon and supporting an oppressed people. And yes, they should be supporting an oppressed people, but they don't recognize that Israel is not the oppressor. Israel is not the ones who are jailing these people. It's their own government, Hamas. And these men have become billionaires. It's not as if they're just making a little bit of money on the side. These men are embezzling billions of dollars from their own people. Just to put it into perspective, Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, is 70-something years old, okay? Inherited some money from his parents, and he turned that inheritance into an $80 million real estate portfolio, which is not like billions of dollars. It's a nice amount of money, don't get me wrong. Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of the Palestinian people, national movement in Gaza, is worth over $1.6 billion. So how does a man who has been in power with only one election, worth $1.6 billion, who represents about 2 million people, versus Benjamin Netanyahu, who is a democratically elected leader? I side with some of his policies, and I side against, and I'm completely opposed to some of his other policies. But he's made his money with real estate, being a shrewd and smart real estate investor. It's worth $80 million.
Yeah.
Mahmoud Abbas is a billionaire.
The big question mark there, and this was brought up in the media in the last couple of days, because the Palestinians were getting large amounts of money in form of aid coming from the European Union, and there were some suggestions that money should be those funds should stop
George,
going into.
Can you turn off your cell phone vibration?
My phone isn't vibrating.
Whose phone is vibrating nonstop? Yeah, because it vibrates on the table and it picks up.
It's not mine. Oh, okay.
No.
So there were a lot of there was a lot of talk about these funds being cut off from Palestinians, and I think it was Emmanuel Macron the other day that came out and said that we can't stop these funds from going because these are going to be necessary to support the population of Palestine. I agree with that, but at the same time, when you're bringing up figures like this, how do we know, and how is there any level of control on where these
Accountability.
funds,
Good question.
where these funds go, and I'm sure they're well intended, right? I mean, the European Union wants to help out the situation over there in Palestine.
You don't think they're saying, let's give Mahmoud 1.6 billion?
No, but how do you know where that money's going for? Like,
Yeah,
where
I
do
know.
they give that money? How do they control where it goes?
2014, our previous Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, was the only person to cut funding 100% to the United Nations Refugee Workers Association, UNRWA, which is the Refugee Association of the United Nations for Palestinians. Why did he cut funding? Because they audited exactly where this money was being stifled to. In 2016, when our current Prime Minister, who I don't want to mention his name, came into power, he went ahead and opened the floodgates again, to a tune of $50 million. $50 million of your taxes, and my taxes all went back to the United Nations Refugee Workers Association.
Yeah.
And we're just one country. Imagine the dozens and dozens of other countries who are contributing and who have contributed. If it was me and I was a leader of a country, I wouldn't be going there and sending money, knowing the history of what's happened. I would, if I want to help, I'd actually send a plane and bring my workers there and build a hospital. I'd build a school. I'd go ahead and build an infrastructure. You know, by the way, I think there are 1,400 or 1,500 Hydro-Quebec workers working in the United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
There's expats from Quebec, Hydro-Quebec workers in the United Arab Emirates, building the infrastructure that's needed. Do the same thing in Palestine, in the Palestinian territories. They need the help because obviously their so-called representatives, these men who call themselves leaders, are incapable of being honest. They're incapable of helping their own people. They're using them as pawns.
Yeah.
So why do Western countries continue to pour this money in if it's
Well, they have-
obvious that
yeah.
it's going to this handful of
Well, that's
opportunists?
transparency issue that we don't know of. But I would assume that any country has an obligation to support the UN. Now, what the UN does with that money has often been brought to question. But this is one very important one, right? I mean, in countries like this that where terrorist pockets bloom, how can you know that the money you're sending to put food on the table of Palestinians, or to send the kids to school, or to build infrastructure, like you said, doesn't go for that specific region and goes to something else? So I just found it interesting that immediately when that happened, it was the question of money and let's cut the funds. And then, you know, obviously there's people on either side. Courtney Grace in the chat says, in my opinion, the difference is that the 9/11, the events in 9/11 affected people in Western countries directly, whereas terrorist attacks in the Middle East doesn't affect us with the same immediacy. Protesters don't suffer repercussions of their advocacy. I mean, I get the point. I get the point. And yes, we don't live in a country where, you know, we risk getting bombed at every single day. But to see these people demonstrating, one wonders, who are they? Where they came from?
Well, this is something I've read in the last few days. I don't have specific numbers, but Western countries have supposedly imported massive numbers of military-aged men from that part of the world over the last several years, and now there's a fear that, you know, as this situation intensifies and blows up, are these guys, are they here for a reason?
Good question.
Well, see, that's because I mean, I think everyone has been witnessing the migration crisis happening following all the wars in Syria and such, and of course, Greece has had to deal with most of it, in Italy as well. Recently, we see what's been going on, that little island under Sicily. I can't remember the name.
Sardinia?
No. It's another little island that has. There's more refugees than whatever number of population they have, and there's a lot of people out there arguing that when you look at all these images of all these, you know, refugees, or, you know, so to speak, they are all male of military age. Yeah. So where are the women fleeing these war-torn countries with their children? Like, how come we don't see them jumping off the boats, right? Of course there are. I mean, we're not going to say that there aren't any. God knows the Greek Coast Guard has picked so many of them off the water. But it's an interesting question. Is this the new form of instilling terrorist pockets in the Western world? I don't know. You know, and we can sit and speculate and start the conspiracy theories, but there's something interesting there to be said.
Why people should ask this question, okay? Why are there so many people from that region of the world, including Israelis, who decide to pack up and leave? And where do they leave? They leave to democracies. They flee tyranny to come to democracy. But yet people here are protesting in support of those countries that are literally ruled by tyrants. So ask yourselves, why do they come here? Why do they not want to stay there? And the people that are coming here, they are so happy to see what kind of life that they can live, because they're, like I said earlier, they're looking for freedom. No one wants to live under tyranny. And that's why so many people, especially the Jews, obviously, we moved to Israel. It's a beautiful country to live. But no one in the history of mankind has ever packed their bags and decided, hey, I want to go and move to a place where I'm not going to be able to do this, and I can't watch a movie, and I don't have internet access, and I'd love to live as a prisoner.
Yeah.
You know, the other incredible thing, and I can understand the youngsters here who are perhaps influenced by, you know, the academia, which is well known, camped in the left, right? I was in university, and in university, everyone seemed to be supporting the Palestinian cause rather than to look at the Israeli side of the story. But to me, it'll always be fascinating to see images of these protesters here or across Canada, where you had, and I think you put that up, Ted, Queers for Palestine, or
no, I didn't. I saw it, but I didn't put it up. It says that there was people holding up Queers for Palestine, and the caption was, "Who's going to tell them?"
Yeah.
Oh, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
It's like, I get it. You want to support Palestine, but you have to understand that a person like yourself would be
lynched.
It would be killed instantly in these countries.
Lynched right away. You'd be lynched right away. There are no freedoms there. You know, people who are supporting the Palestinian people, I don't blame them at all. And like I said earlier, I'm empathetic towards these people. They're lovely people, but they're not being oppressed by Israel. Israel is not the oppressor. As a matter of fact, Israel goes ahead and does everything they can. As a matter of fact, people aren't familiar that Mahmoud Abbas had some very serious physical illnesses just a few years ago. He was treated by a Jewish doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, a Jewish doctor was secretly brought into Gaza to help him with what they thought was a severe brain and ear infection. Okay, he then was flown earlier to Baltimore, Maryland for what they thought, I believe, was colorectal cancer. There are tons and tons of Gazans who go into Israel every day. They have their papers all vetted, and they go in and they study at Ben Gurion University, Tel Aviv, Hebrew U. As a matter of fact, I just posted on Instagram, actually. There's a woman who I've done business with. Her name is Fariba, and she was from Gaza. And I don't know the story of how she fled to Canada, but she originally got her degree in engineering at Ben Gurion University in Beersheba, which is just outside of Gaza. And she came to Canada. She fled Gaza. I don't know the story of how she got out, but she got here, married, kids, and she gives 10% of her salary every month to Ben Gurion University alma mater.
Amazing.
Yeah. And she's not scared anymore because she's here, but she couldn't voice her opinion about the tyrants that she was living under while she was there.
Right.
But here yeah. And people should actually also follow a good friend of mine who's a Palestinian advocate, born in the West Bank. His name is Bassem Eid, E-I-D, okay? Fascinating international speaker who travels from one country to another, exposing the truth. And the one book that I would suggest everyone reads, or if there's a documentary out there, it's called The Son of Hamas. And it's a kid. Well, he's not a kid anymore. He's an adult. His name is Mossab Hassan Youssef. He is the son of one of the founding fathers of Hamas, and he fled. He fled, and now he goes and exposes what Hamas is all about to the world. He's obviously under very severe protection. Yeah. He's got to be fearful for his life every minute of the day. But yeah, he fled, and he goes to one country to another to now go ahead and expose what these people are all about.
How long is the service of the military in Israel?
Women have to serve for approximately 2 years, and men serve for almost 3 years. Yeah.
I love the idea of a woman who can kill me with her bare hands and take me out with a single shot from 500 yards.
She could do a lot more than that.
That's so
Ted.
hot.
You know, I think Israel is the only country, at least that I know of, where the military, the people that are serving in the military have their weapons on them at all times.
Yeah.
At all times. And we saw so many of them when I was in Israel, and you're out in a plaza or at a restaurant or whatever, and you see them. They're
Like in their civilian clothes, you're carrying your Uzi with you or whatever.
You're technically not supposed to leave your weapon unattended ever, except for when you're sleeping, you put it under your bed. But whenever you're out and about anywhere during military service, you have to carry your weapon at all times. Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating? Like you just never know when it's going to come.
Yeah.
So you just need to be prepared at all times.
Let's go back to the events of this weekend, Jeff, talking about you never know when it's going to come. I don't think anybody was expecting anything like this. No one ever expects anything like this to happen. It's so unthinkable. Where were you when you found out? How did you find out? What was your reaction?
I was actually at synagogue with my daughter. She wanted to go and celebrate because it was a Jewish holiday called Simchas Torah, which is the celebration of Moses getting the Torah from God. And it's a nice celebration. It's actually not one of these fasting days. It's a day of where you're celebrating. And it was a lazy day for us. And she wanted to go. And we put on our nice clothes. We went. And when I left synagogue and I opened up my phone, I was like, oh, my God. Oh, my God. And then my phone started blowing up with friends asking me, how's your family? What's going on over there? Have you heard anything? And all hell broke loose. All hell broke loose. I was in shock because, you know, we're no longer living in the 40s or 50s where the rule is there are no rules, okay? And you're going to see guerrilla warfare all over the place. This is a time where people are supposed to be looking towards a peaceful resolution to things. And even though I know Hamas exists and Hezbollah exists, I'm always been very confident and comfortable knowing that my country is secure. This, I'm still befuddled. I'm still befuddled how it happened and to the magnitude of it, how it happened. It's the most amount of Jewish deaths in the history of Israel since the Holocaust.
In a single day.
In a single day.
Yeah, I was just about to say that statistic. I saw that, and you don't realize. I mean, you're looking at these things, and you're like, "Holy, this is tragic," and then you see that come up somewhere, and it gets your brain thinking. You're like, "Holy shit!"
Were you surprised at the degree of atrocity that was committed? I mean, it's like I used the word earlier, unthinkable. Like, how can people do this to other people? Some of the things that were done.
You know, I grew up with 4 grandparents who were Holocaust survivors, and 2 of them couldn't talk about it, and 2 of them could. And the things that I heard, not as a little kid, but as a teenage and young man, it obviously brought tears to my eyes. But I asked that question, Lama, why?
Yeah.
How did this happen? How do people become so indoctrinated with hate? And it starts at an early age, and you're teaching your children that you have to kill Jews, and you have to do this, and you could become a martyr, and you're going to go to Allah and live eternity. It's an indoctrination of people because normal, civilized human beings wouldn't even fathom, not even just to think of doing something like this. But these people, I don't even like calling them people because this is inhumane. It's subhuman to do what they did.
I wonder how that small percentage becomes like that when the overwhelming majority, as you were saying right off the top, are decent people. Are they handpicked? Are they?
Some of them are handpicked right off the street. You could literally be a 7 or 8-year-old child in Ramallah or Jenin or Gaza, the West Bank, or the Gaza Strip. You could be plucked off the street, put into the back of a truck, and basically said, "This is what you're going to do. Otherwise, we're going to slaughter your family."
Jesus.
And, listen, it's not propaganda. I've seen it, and it's available on YouTube for anyone who wants to go and watch. And all you have to do is go ahead and search, put it in a little search engine, Palestinian children indoctrination or Palestinian children school education. This is something that like I said, it's based on education, because if you educate a people and you give them an opportunity in life to go forward with a healthy, happy life, no one in their right mind would ever do what they're doing. But if you control people and indoctrinate them in hating, then this is what you see. The Nazis did like abhorrible things to civilized people who weren't trying to attack them or kill them.
Yeah.
Like we haven't learned. I think we have learned. It's just this sect of people. It starts with education. We have to go ahead and literally re-educate that entire region of people. And I'm not saying as a colonialist to go in and teach them English, but just to give them an opportunity and teach them about the world. They don't have to go to McDonald's if they don't want to, and they don't have to watch Hockey Night in Canada, but at least live a civilized life where you can go to the airport with your passport and travel. And you can send your kids to a university so that if they want to become a doctor or an engineer or a lawyer, I sound like a Jewish dad right now. But give them an opportunity for having a free life. Like, I'm so blessed that I was brought up in a country where I didn't have to pay a lot of money to go to school, and I could get a passport for $50. And if I made enough money, I can go to the airport and travel anywhere I want. And these people don't have that ability. They don't have the ability to make a living. They don't have the ability to travel like you and I. They don't have the ability to do this. They don't have a podcast opportunity every day unless there's a green flag behind them that's supporting Hamas. So it's tyranny.
Yeah.
If anyone supports tyranny, I can't talk to you. If you
Yeah.
want to support freedom and the ability to have a healthy, a happy life, I'm all ears.
And we have to point out that the majority of the Western world was quick to react to this and to call out this act of terrorism. But it's still fascinating to me that there are still some politicians that don't, and they were very careful in their statement and were like literally on the line.
We're trying to play both sides of the street.
We saw
Disgusting.
that. It is because I mean you
Disgusting.
need to call out things as they are, and I'm referring to Olivia Chow, late.
Well, and our,
mayor
our
of
own
Toronto.
mayor, our own mayor was
Our
the
own
same
mayor.
way.
Yeah.
Our own mayor walked the line there, just very careful not. But at the same time, it is what it is. Why not just call it out? I'm thinking of Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, who is the leader of Quebec Solidaire. Dude, it's a terrorist act. That's all it is.
Why? I don't know what he said. What did he say?
He said that
Was he straddling the line as well?
He says he denounces the attack of. Hold on. Let's go find it because it's interesting. I actually replied to him.
He's usually a very straightforward, no nonsense type of guy.
Yeah.
No, but that party is very well known to be anti-Jewish.
Anti-Israel.
Oh, are they? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, don't forget the first MNA that was elected with Quebec Solidaire was Amir Kadir, who was well known
To be a full-blown anti-Semite.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I know the name.
You don't remember there was a shoe store in the Mile End, and he wasn't even Jewish. The guy, he was a regular merchant that was selling shoes, and because he had a brand of shoe that was made in Israel.
Naot shoes. I remember this story.
Remember that there were a bunch of demonstrators outside this guy's store, demonstrating to the fact that this guy was selling a shoe that was made in Israel. And of all people who went to join that demonstration, Amir Kadir.
Amir Kadir.
It's ridiculous, man. It's freaking ridiculous. Where's Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois? First of all, Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois, two days to come out with any statement. And when he did come out with his statement, let me tell you what he wrote. Here he goes. Condamnation totale des attaques du Hamas. So total condemnation of the Hamas's attacks. It's not just an attack. This is an act of terror.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it goes non à l'escalade meurtrière, so no to deadly escalation. All attack, I'm just loosely translating, all attack against civilians is an act of war. We have to protect the lives everywhere in Israel and in Palestine. It's just a blanket statement that any politician can make without really
Pandering.
without really rocking the boat.
Not wanting
right?
to lose votes.
So
Zero integrity.
and I can understand. I mean, in Quebec Solidaire, you have Ruba Ghazal, who's elected, who is Palestinian. I forget the other guy's name, who's elected in the north part of Kremezi, in the riding of Kremezi, who's also an Arab. Amir Kadir, who's Iranian and who's spoken out against Israel many times. So I get it. You have people around you, but at the same time, it's about doing what's right.
Yeah.
You can't deny what the fact is, right? But aside from that, small, group of nonsensical politicians, in general, the reaction was quite supportive towards Israel. And I do have to note that, and I don't know if it's a sickness in Trudeau's government, there were people, and Melissa Lantsman, who is the opposition House leader, for the Conservatives, she made a statement on
The
Twitter.
MP for Thornhill, Toronto.
Exactly. She made a statement on Twitter saying that she is getting numerous calls from Israel of Canadians stuck there.
They need to come home.
Requesting help. What do we do? Because the embassy was closed. The Canadian embassy in Tel Aviv was closed because obviously it happened on a Saturday. We were celebrating Thanksgiving here on Monday. But you see, you read these things and you wonder, do you not have one cell left in your brain? The country was...
Are we going to get into the whole Justin Trudeau thing? Because I'm ready to rant. I'm ready. You tell me.
No, but you understand. And it's
I'm on a roll. So, if you want to talk about someone with zero integrity, with zero experience, with zero merit, all right? He was elected because of nepotism, because his last name is Trudeau, because he's got a nice mop of hair that I'm even,
it is nice.
I'm jealous that I don't have as much
of hair.
I'm okay with my hair, but he's got better hair, okay? Does he have as much integrity as me? No chance. I'll say it like it is. He panders to votes. He talks on both sides of his mouth. And for someone who is so supportive of his Jewish constituents and of Israel, for him to just go ahead and offer blanket statements, where's the military support? And why are you still supporting UNRWA? And why are you not going ahead and just full-blown condemning the Palestinian Authority, Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, Qatar, and Iran?
Yeah.
Even when he does condemn something, and I saw him at a speech he made the other night. Him and Polyev were at the same
Yeah.
event, and they both.
Which was refreshing to see.
Yeah. But when Trudeau was speaking, and he was trying to be the serious statesman, right, and just no gravitas.
No, he's a drama queen.
None.
Yeah.
I can't
No,
listen to him.
just no credibility.
But
Zero.
I mean, look, we can sit here and talk about their policies that make absolutely no sense and the way that they're governing. But at the end of the day, it comes down to just the absence of this government. Where are you? How can this embassy be closed? The minute that you heard of an attack in Israel, you know there are Canadian nationals in there. It's a state of emergency. How is the embassy closed?
A girl from Toronto, I believe, is one of the dead.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
There were.
I loosely read that this morning on.
So it just came out because I know there were two men that
Guy
they were
from
Winnipeg
one from
and one from-
Westmount,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
one from Vancouver, I think.
That's
was
right.
The other guy.
Yeah.
All at that rave, I guess.
I don't know. I don't know. But I believe that there was over 250 bodies recovered so far.
Yeah, from
260.
from that
260,
event. Yeah. It's ridiculous, honestly. And this is a good thing and also the bad thing about social media because you're getting the information right away, which is good, right? And you're getting it from different sources, and you don't have to rely on mainstream media. Which, by the way, we should come back to remind me. Talked about something that happened in the CBC. I don't know if you saw that leaked email.
Yeah.
But there's good thing in that respect. But the nasty thing is that you're getting all these images, specifically to this event. And I don't know about you, but every time I see something like this, I imagine myself being there, and I get palpitations. I get this anxiety. Right, and you have all these images. I saw the image of that kibbutz where they went in and they murdered everyone, and they released footage of security footage of the gate where you have terrorists from Hamas. They were trying to get in, and obviously the gate is closed. So they waited for a civilian car to come so that the gate could open, and they just murdered them. And you're seeing this, right? And there's countless, and we're not going to get into it. I mean, the show isn't about that. And you're seeing this thing, and you're like, holy shit, fuck, what and immediately, and I don't know if it's normal to do that, but I thought of myself in that car driving to the gate, and then you have these imbeciles coming out and just shooting me. And you get all these palpitations and you get stressed. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even live with the idea of something like that happening to me or to anyone I know. And it's real. It happens. It happened, and it's tragic.
Were you ever under fire, Jeff, when you were in the IDF?
Yeah, twice.
Yeah.
Twice.
And
It's not like the movies.
No, eh?
It's not like the movies. You have certain parameters that you have to I guess live under.
Does your training kick in automatically?
Yes and no. It depends. I mean, you can't be completely trained always to go ahead and react with every specific type of scenario.
Right.
But yeah, you never shoot first. The position of the Israeli Defense Force, and I should reiterate defense, is we're not an offensive army. We're there to protect Israel. And to protect Israel doesn't necessarily mean by going out and having offensive operations. So the first and foremost position of the Israeli Defense Force is to protect. And that also means protecting Palestinians, by the way. I should reiterate something that was said earlier, is that the Israeli military is one of the most humane militaries in the world. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh my God, is he crazy? They go ahead and the Israeli military murders children. We drop thousands and thousands of leaflets before any bombing happens. And not just minutes before, days before, hours before. There are phone calls made, automatic robotic phone calls made throughout Gaza or wherever a bombing is going to happen to tell people you need to evacuate. If you're in this building, you need to not be there between this time and this time. I don't know about any other militaries that take precaution to protect lives. To protect lives. You know, I have a cousin of mine in Israel who's a hematologist, a very, very well-known, renowned doctor. And I once asked him, he's a very left-wing Israeli. He doesn't basically side with some of my views, but I side with some of his. And I asked him, what would happen if you were a surgeon, for example, and a terrorist was brought to the hospital and you could go ahead and save his life? Would you save his life? And he goes, of course I'd save his life. I'm a doctor. I don't go ahead and ask for someone's identification or what their background is. If a patient is coming in and they need my assistance, and all doctors in Israel are like that. And the military acts that way too. Now, is every single soldier in Israel the most humanitarian soldier? No. There are guys who are a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
You're going to find guys like that.
But you're going to find that in any situation on the globe.
Yeah.
All right? Is every single Greek person measured and reasonable and easy to talk to? Yeah, in that case,
Yeah, but
probably.
what about Poseidon?
Except for Poseidon.
I was waiting. I was like, hey, when am I going to be mentioned over here?
Speaking of the army, we have someone in the chat. First of all, someone wants you to run for PM, Tarmac 76, Jeff for PM.
All right.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then FL is asking, are Hasidic Jews obligated to do the Israeli army?
No, they're not. And that's been a bone of contention for a lot of Israelis for many years. And as a matter of fact, they have all access to medical care, dental care. They all they have to do is go ahead and pray and learn the Torah, but they do not take on military service. Some of them do. Some of them actually do find an affinity towards serving in the army. And that's been something that I think is progressing over the last few years. But to answer the question, no, they don't have to.
There you go.
Shameful, if you ask me.
Well, it's when it comes to religion, right? I mean, we're talking about the indoctrination of the Muslims and how they get to that point. And I don't want to say that there's the equivalent over on the Christian side, but there are extremists, right? I mean, the religion affects people on either side, and
It's how they interpret their wordings in a Torah, in a Quran, in the Bible. It's all up to interpretation. The vast majority of people interpret things peacefully. But there are some people who interpret wordings in such a radicalized way, and they continue to go ahead and become baited into that radicalization. And that's why I said it all comes down to education.
What is the community doing here? Obviously, I think from day one they've been very active, which I think is completely normal. I know firsthand how well organized they are. What's happening at a community level over here?
Money being raised for Magen David Adom, which is the ambulance and first responders department of the Israeli government, being that is the minimal that we can all do. Rallies, and it's very difficult to stand idle and to not be able to physically do anything. I implore all of your non-Jewish listeners, which maybe there are 5 Jewish listeners, 5 Jewish subscribers.
Well, there's Moish.
Well, now there's 6. Yeah. Okay. I'll become a subscriber too.
All right.
I implore the non-Jewish communities of the world to show your support and show your voice. And yes, if you're going to support the Palestinian people, by all means, support them. But do it in a respectful way where you're not slamming the Israeli government. The Israeli government is not who is responsible for this. This comes down to the Khomeini of Iran and the people who are harboring the Hamas terrorist leaders in Qatar and Hamas.
We didn't get into the Iran aspect of this. Are they basically the bankrollers
They have been
of
for
Hamas?
many years.
So
Yeah.
is Hamas fighting a proxy war on Iran's behalf against
So is
Israel?
Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Hezbollah is funded mainly by the Iranian regime.
How much does this raise the possibility or danger of a direct conflict
with
between
Iran?
Israel and
it's
Iran?
funny that you asked that because a very dear friend of mine asked me the same thing just yesterday. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know. I know that Bibi Netanyahu is a staunch supporter of his country and will not stand for anything like this. And if it means that Netanyahu ultimately puts the fist down and goes all out, I don't know.
Is Iran nuclear capable?
No,
Yeah.
are they?
I believe so.
Is Israel?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, a lot of that side of the argument was made when the U.S. decided to move its warships into the Eastern Mediterranean, not particularly because they want to help Israel or because they wanted to bomb Gaza, but more. A lot of analysts believe that it's to be prepared in case something were to happen with Iran.
If it escalates.
Yeah. And with respect to Hezbollah, I know that the Lebanese government came out immediately and said, listen, we're not involved in this. We don't want conflict with Israel, but we just can't control Hezbollah. So it just goes to show you how, it's like watching a Western movie. It's just free for all.
You know, a lot of people aren't familiar with what Beirut was back in the 50s and 60s.
The Paris
and
of the Middle East.
Okay?
Yeah.
I wasn't there, I wasn't born, but the pictures and videos that I saw of Beirut back then was like Las Vegas on steroids, okay? And Tehran, before the
I've seen
Ayatollah
pictures,
took over Tehran and the Shah was in power, we're talking about a mecca of art and history and architecture and music and incredible booming economy. And this is what happens when freedom is removed and you don't longer have a free market economy of people who can go ahead and travel and trade and learn. This is what happens when clerics come in and they come in with their tyrannical regime and are literally, they have the noose around all of these people's necks. So ask yourself, why are there so many Iranians living in Montreal? Why are there so many Iranians living in Toronto, all over the world? Why do they flee? Why do they flee? Yeah. You ask them. I love Iranian food, by the way. Persian food is fantastic. Farsi food is incredible. I've gone to this Farsi restaurant on Sherbrooke many times, and even though I don't speak Farsi, I sit and we talk with the owner, and he tells me, I would love to visit Israel. I would love to go ahead and see what it's all about, but I can't because I have, a passport that shows that
He's an Iranian national. Yeah.
I'm an Iranian national.
You can't get into Israel if you're an
I
Iranian
don't believe
national?
so.
Wow.
And you certainly can't be in Iran if you have any kind of Israeli affiliation.
But the opposite happens as well, because I remember when I traveled to Israel, the people that were accompanying us told us, when you get to the airport, you can choose either to have your passport stamped or they give you like a side note that, and the reason for that is that if ever you're planning on traveling to any other Arab nation, you're going to have issues giving your passport if they see that you've visited Israel.
You know that a few months ago, the under-20 FIFA World Cup was played. You know where it was played?
No, I don't follow.
It was supposed to be played in Thailand.
Okay.
You know why it was moved from Thailand? Because Thailand doesn't have a treaty with Israel.
Oh.
So because Israel was playing in the tournament, they basically said, if you're not going to accept the Israeli team, you're no longer going to be able to host the competition. And the Israeli under-20 team, I don't know even where they're ranked in the world ranking. They ended up making it, I think, to the semifinals.
Right.
Okay. And the leading scorer on the Israeli under-20 team, you dying over there, Ted?
I am.
You okay?
You okay?
Yeah.
You're fine?
Yeah.
You want some milk?
They got him. They got him.
Shit.
Yeah,
I got a cold in Miami. How does that work?
No, but all that to show that things are still not that dandy, right? And you're thinking, let me just go to Israel, and there are countries that just don't recognize it, and you're just going to go there as a tourist, and next thing you know, you're going to travel to Egypt or I don't know anywhere else, and you're going to say, "What did you do in Israel?"
Yeah,
and it's incredible the amount of security that we had to go through and briefings that we had to go through. I remember when we were leaving Israel, we had to sit down and they briefed us on how to prepare our luggage, make sure that
your luggage is always with you.
Yeah. They make sure that you're the only one that touches your luggage. You're going to get questioned on this at the airport. And another fascinating thing that I've only seen in Israel, you know how you check your luggage over here, you just put them on a little belt and then they go through and they get scanned or wherever. In the airport in Israel, I remember going through the machine myself with the luggage. It's this huge fucking machine and you just physically walk through it. They scan everything, you with your luggage. Oh, man.
Oh, they'll tell you if you've got prostate cancer when going
My
through that
goodness.
machine.
Let's wrap it up, Ted. How do you want to close this
I
sad
told you the
episode?
90 minutes would go fast. We could do another 90.
It
Easily.
was fast.
Yeah,
It was
I want to
fast.
do a show about your grandparents sometime.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting.
I think so too.
Yeah.
My grandmother on my mother's side was born in Holland. My mom was Dutch, and she was actually a friend and classmate of Anne Frank.
Oh wow.
Yeah, remarkable
Amazing.
story that she lived through.
Are
We
they
had-
they're still alive, your grandparents?
No, unfortunately, they passed.
We had Tommy Schnurmacher on the Standing By the Terry and Ted
I saw that
podcast.
episode. Yeah.
And both of Tommy's parents
I remember,
were
yeah.
Holocaust survivors. And Tommy was funny talking about it. And
Okay.
Terry said, I feel bad. You're telling Holocaust stories and we're laughing. And Tommy said, that's part of what got them through.
Wow.
Humor was part of what.
Yeah.
It was a survival mechanism for them. Humor. Again, that's another. I could do an hour and a half on that, and we will. Jeff's coming back.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I know it was a little bit of a somber episode, but I think it's important to be talking about these issues and to be having these discussions. Jeff, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. I think we all appreciate it.
Thank you.
To have another voice that has been on the ground, that has the experience, and that could shed some knowledge and
It's an
understanding.
informed perspective.
Exactly.
From someone who knows the lay of the land.
There you have it. Poseidon, you can follow him on all social media platforms. I am Poseidon.com is his website. The Poseidon69 on all social media platforms. Ted Bird over here, ladies and gentlemen. The Standing By podcast will be airing soon, I think. Are you
We're
started
in the studio this week. Later this week, we start to record season 6.
On Friday. Yeah.
I don't even know what number season it is. It's 6 or 7. That's how
Already?
That's how fabulously
Jeez.
successful we've been. I've lost count.
It's
So
coming,
stand
people.
by.
Yeah, it's coming.
Stand by for Standing By.
Be
Yeah.
patient. It's coming. It's on the way. And you can follow my stuff over at the Backstage Podcast and Politiquement Parlant, which happen on a weekly basis. Thank you all so very much. Jeff, thanks again, man.
Thank you, my
Appreciate it.
friend.